if you look at what the hadith says, for example, concerning women and children. Now this is from Al-Bukhari, and it's based on a narration of Abdullah. Now, as far as the hadith go, there, what the companions of the Prophet, what they saw him do or what they heard from him, they would narrate it, and there's a chain of narrators. You know, in case you would like to know, there's a chain of narrators, and these are among the strongest hadith or narrations of what he did. So, on the authority of Abdullah, that a woman was found killed in one of the battles fought by the Prophet of Allah. He disapproved the killing of women and children. It says they're very clear in the strong hadith. So how can someone else tell me that Islam teaches killing women and children when right there, you know, it forbids it right there? That's just one example. Okay, so when, again, the interviewer was asking him, and then he said that when he talked about politics, then, you know, he started justifying based on politics. So he's not using religion, he's not using Islam, it's more politics, it's political in context. And, you know, I'd like for you to go out and research history before you come to these, you know, rapid conclusions based on a lot of false data that's out in the world, unfortunately. Now, for example, the bombings we're seeing, I'll give you one example very quick. Now, for example, when the Haditha killings, you know, it came out that 24 people were killed in Haditha. People were shot, and, you know, houses were blown up. People wanted to know what happened. Now, the Marines were in that region at the time, and what they had officially said was that there was a suicide bombing in that place, and these many 24 people died. But later on, we find out that no, there wasn't a suicide bombing. What happened was the Marines were over there, and one of their comrades was killed, and in retaliation for that, they went out and they massacred 24 people. They went to one house where they raped a girl, and they killed the rest of her family, shot them. There's evidence for this. They burned them. After raping her, they killed them all, and they burned them all, and they burned the whole house down. Okay, so, and suicide bombing was blamed for this. So as a thinking person, I'd like for you to ask yourself, okay, so what is truth and what is falsehood when we hear the news? When we hear of another bombing, based on what evidence? You know, we don't have the FBI over there doing a thorough investigation, investing hundreds of thousands to investigate whenever a crime happens. You know, what we see is some strange site which no one heard of, you know, people posting stuff over there, and, you know, it's supposed to be some extremist Islamic site, you know, and many people today say, you know, that a lot of stuff on the internet is inauthentic. It would be very easy for someone to make up something like that and say, you know, we claim responsibility. What I'm saying is there needs to be hard evidence before we come to conclusions, and you know, not everything you see may be true. You know, maybe what you see on the news, it might be different in reality. You know, we're seeing in the news on mainstream media through embedded reporters with the military. And many independent journalists, they're not allowed to go in some regions. And where they do go, you find a different story. So, now on another issue, you said that, and one other thing I want to say about, you know, you're talking about anti-Jewish. I believe you should research the difference, or take note of the difference between being Jewish and being Zionist, because not all Jews are Zionist, not all Zionists are Jews. Zionists are people who believe in the nation, the geopolitical nation of Israel, that it has a right to exist where it is in the Middle East. And Jews are, it is another religion. They're a Semitic people. Some Jews are actually anti-Zionist. They don't believe that Israel has the right to be where it is right now. They believe that it's against Judaism that Israel is established. Okay, so why would there be Jews like this if there wasn't a difference between Zionism and Judaism? A lot of what you see in the Middle East is, unfortunately, it's become the result of this decades-long conflict that began when the British gave the Palestinian lands to the Ashkenazi and European Jews. So a lot of it, unfortunately, it's permeated into people's culture on both sides, and I hope that we can find a solution to this massive problem where millions of people are affected. War hasn't been the solution for decades. I hope they can work together and find solutions so that relations will be better once again as they were for centuries. Um, Now, and one other thing is that if you talk about World War II, there's a lot of propaganda out there, um, bashing Muslims for being anti-Jew, for example. Why during World War II would many Muslims help Jews out and protect them from Hitler? There's so many dozens of examples all across North Africa, the Middle East, Turkey, parts of Europe. In France, hundreds of thousands of Muslims fought with the French against Hitler. So, and yes, they were protected in the largest mosque in Paris. Hundreds of Jews were protected there and given asylum, uh, from persecution when the Nazis came out to find them or hunt them down. If you want, I'll give you context. Now, one other thing you say is that Muslim beliefs are outdated, barbaric, and medieval. I'll focus on the outdated portion first. And, we can talk about women's rights, for example, because, a lot of Muslims, we get criticism for not giving women rights, by other people. For one example I'll give you is that women, through Islam, women were given the right to inheritance, for example, to property. And, I mean, this was 1400 years ago, plus. So what I'd like to know is, these women, they were given the right to inheritance when many other cultures and civilizations, they didn't have anything close to that. In other parts of the world, women were seen as part of the property, which was inherited. For example, if a man died, all his property would be given to a son or a relative, including his wife. Okay, she was a part of the property. She wasn't. She had no rights of her own. Okay, over herself. So, compared to that, look at what Islam did. It gives her the right to property, and I know in parts of Europe and other nations, this is very, very recent in British law. This is just maybe a century or so ago, and it wasn't until the 40s and 50s that women were they were given their full right to inheritance, for example. Now, another thing I'd like to tell you is, for example, female infanticide, which happened in many areas. In the pre-Islamic Arabian culture, Islam came and it forbid that. So, I don't believe Islam was outdated at all. It forbid that. It said, whether a God gives you a girl or a boy, they're the same. And, Islam never, spiritually, Islam sees men and women equal. You're only better or worse than each other, not just men and women, but among all people, based on how much belief you have in God and how much faith you have in Him. That's the only thing that separates people in the eyes of God. So, okay,